You're a lying liar. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if anyone will be able to join and to see anything, but we have our mortgage, we have our phone, we have car loan because not everybody had enough money to get a car outright. Your internet bill, any loans you might have, student or otherwise, uh, electrical, utilities, and home security. Utilities because they're fluctuating. I'm going to put over here as like an actual utility bill. And then this is going to be the final after we take out any extra stuff uh, and we take this total, which is anybody's utilities, home security, whatnot, in addition to the utility bill. Savings, if you have enough, I recommend doing it because it's always nice to have extra money laying around. So this right here is your total. So this will be total monthly need, right? Because you're saving, you're paying for your car insurance and your gas, all your utilities and electricals, loans, internet. And I separate car loan and other loans because mostly, like, unless it's pretty specific, like student loans and stuff like that, those can be deferred. Your car loan, you never want to defer that. Phone will be what it is, mortgage and rent will be what it is. And then I have basically some math that'll work out to this will tell us what your gross pay is, and then I have basically 24% taken out. And if anybody's check is higher than the estimate, we can always operate under the understanding that you're getting paid more than kind of good a guesstimate pops out as. Um, Extras, we got Netflix, Amazon. I have personal property tax down here, not necessarily as an extra, but just as a reminder that while the bill only comes once a year, it is something that you should probably incorporate into your budget because you need to have that money available when the bill shows up. It's only once a year, so it's not necessarily in the monthly need. You could skinny up other parts of your budget when it's almost time, but also put Spotify up here because it's pretty common. Um, this extra spending section. So this would be kind of something that someone would have to fill out as they go throughout the month. Mm. Because, lunch out at work, sit down fast food dinners, unknown extras like the light bulb in the bathroom goes out, yada yada yada. Vending machine, if you work somewhere with a vending machine, those expenses you also have to track. Um, but so yeah, so I did kind of like a mock up over here with someone working at like a McDonald's nearby. The math works out to where they're getting $454 a week if they're working full time. That means that their monthly income is only 1817, and if there are ever a month, which usually there's 4 months where you get 5 paychecks instead of four, then you have these 4 months where this is your actual monthly income. And not everybody tracks these separately. And down here, I have them kind of combined together. But, you have this is your check every week. I put together mortgage rent that I've been seeing locally, phone bill, $50. It could be more, it could be less, and everybody can, and it can all come out to be different. Car loan, got to get to and from work, internet, loans. I took an example as this person didn't have any car insurance and gas, so I have $100 a month for car insurance that you would then save every month up until the car insurance payment needs to be made. And then I don't know how typical it is, but if you work locally and you live locally, you should be able to get away with 4 fill-ups a month. Gas is getting a little expensive, so we'll change this to $30. So, you know, you have your car insurance, your 4 fill-ups, $30 each. And then savings. So this savings amount I put in here because when I first ran the budget, this was about how much you would have for um, a single meal, because I like to do this breakdown down here. I forgot to add this one to this. So I like to keep track of how many dollars per meal you're supposed to spend, right? Because at the end of the day, food is pretty important. You're gonna have to eat most days. Some days you might only eat once, right? And if you do, that's great. You know, I hope it's as nutritious as it can be, and I hope it's as filling as it can be. But sometimes you might only eat one day. But in the interest of keeping track of things, right? Because that's the whole deal with a budget. You got to keep track of it. It's good to know like what your price per meal should be. Right. So the price per meal of a person who like starts like let's say April 1st, right? Their price per meal for the whole month is only $4.81. Now, that's not a whole that's not a whole lot of money. It's very little money actually. But once you lay it all out like this, right? Now you get that $10 thing at any fast food restaurant, right? It's it's a treat, and feel free to treat yourself. We all gotta do what we want to do, right? But you only got $430 for the month for food, clothes, unknown extra expenses, all that, right? And this budget doesn't even have Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, nothing like that, right? And you could say, well, if my price to eat my food is only that, then I want it to be less. Maybe you don't have home security, and so your utility bill goes up and down and it fluctuates. You don't want to save money, so now we're almost up to $5. Let's say you get lucky one month, your utility bill is only $157. Now you're up to six a month, and you're still, if you stay under this six a month, you're still saving your money for your car insurance. You're paying your car loan. You're paying your internet. You're paying your phone. You're paying your rent because you're staying under this $6 a meal, right? Now, what happens when there's like like say there's an event, okay? You gotta one of your friends gets married, right? And you want to buy a tux because you know so we want to do things, right? Okay, so you rented your tux. That's this unknown extra section. That unknown extra is now taken out of your monthly budget, right? We have our total up here, and we have it without the extra because this is subtracting all of these. Or no, this is actually only subtracting this because really these shouldn't happen, but I should probably change this to track all of these. Let's do that actually. Okay. So, we're down to $3.80 for our price per meal for us eating for 30 days, 3 meals a day. And we're only worried about ourselves, right? So that's what this looks like. You know, your friend got married, you rented a tux, your utility bill luckily came in a little light that month. You had $300 for the month, $3.80. At $3.80, it's not a lot. That's nothing. But it is enough to have, some pasta or get some tortillas and some cheese, and you really have to start thinking about like how much money per meal am I consuming? And this you could add in home security, um, if you need it, maybe like just a simple service to like a camera or something. Um, and then you would be able to have that peace of mind, but then that would eat into this budget, right? And, and this is why, when you're in, like a local McDonald's job, which, this 14.95, this is just a quick Google search with a local McDonald's. But like when you're in a situation like this, the reason that most people are like, it's not great, it sucks, and sometimes they're not like the most agreeable person. This is why people recommend roommates when you're in a like less high paying situation, right? Because you're still gonna have your car loan, you're still gonna have your phone bill, you're still gonna have your car insurance and your gas. Um, but if you have a roommate, right? So you have a roommate and they're responsible for their half of this budget. Your rent goes down, your internet goes down because you guys should be splitting that, and then your utility bill also goes down. So let's take this good month for an example. Your obligation to the utility is only $80. Okay, well now our price per meal starting the month off is $11 per meal. $11 per meal still ain't great. That $10 thing from, like Wendy's or whatever, what have you, that you want to go get, you're up $1 even on a out meal, right? And then this is you eating 3 times a day for 30 days. If you have a $2 breakfast, you just made $9, right? If you skip breakfast, which I don't recommend, but if you do, you just made $11, right? So, and this is the same job, same money, same utility bills, mortgage, everything, right? But because you have a roommate that you are not responsible for feeding, right? We left the person in the house to one because they should be feeding themselves. Especially if it's a roommate situation, right? Like you have a significant other, this gets more complicated because you if you are supporting them, you don't want to have to ever bring anything up where like, hey, you got to feed yourself. Like that's not what we're trying to do here. We're just literally saying two out of high school during college people working at McDonald's paying for a roof, right? And you can see how easy everything gets when you have a roommate, though, right? The utility bill for this lucky month went down to $80, and your mortgage goes down to 325 and says 650. Boom. Now our leftover budget, right? After the utility bill is $9.94, and you have that $11 a meal. And this is all budgeting your car insurance, and then we could go back to where we're by ourselves. Let's go back to when we're by ourselves and we're responsible for everything, right? We didn't have to buy the tux. um oh right, the internet's got to go back up to 100. Okay, so we're 599 because we didn't rent the tux this time, right? And this is when I'm like, okay, this is the budget. Now we have to say, okay, well, what if we're tracking down, what if we're actually going to track our personal property tax too? So if you have a 250 car loan, personal property tax typically is going to rate value your car at probably 30 to 40% of its Kelley Blue Book value. If your car loan is 250, you're car is probably anywhere from like 12 to 15,000 in blue book value. So your personal property tax is going to value it at, I'm going to say, maybe $6,000. And then your rate on personal property tax, depending on where you are, could be anywhere from 6% to 12%. It doesn't really matter, but let's say 8%, right? So personal property tax, they're going to value your car at 4,500. You, over the year, you need to pay, just split the difference and do 8, right? But so that's $360. That's your personal property tax bill. That's what it's going to show up to your house at. So don't freak out about this $1.99 meal, because that's not actually what's going to happen. We're going to go back in here after we calculate value of car, potential property tax rate of 8%, yada, yada, yada. We're going to divide this by 12 because it's once a year. This is not a all the time bill. This is once a year, and we just have to be aware of this money. So we split it to $30 a month. And now we have an even clearer picture of like what our situation has to be, right? Personal property tax, $30, $650 for the mortgage, $250 for the car loan, $100 for the internet, $220 for gas, insurance, yada yada. And now we added on $30 a month for personal property tax that we can defer because it's once a year bill. But we don't have to immediately pay it. It's, you need to be aware that you should be saving $30 a month. And that $30 a month, look, it didn't change our price per meal all that much, right? We were at $5.99 because we didn't buy the tux this month, right? $30 a month. Now we're at $5.66. And you know, we had ideas for meals for $3.80, right? And you know, and all of this is, you know, assuming that, you know, you're gonna go to McDonald's, you're gonna do what you got to do, and then there's one thing in here that I haven't really addressed, and it's my fault, right? So you have laundry, okay? So you work at McDonald's. Chances are you're probably going to be doing laundry twice a week. A lot of places will take quarters. Some of them will take the cards. Yada yada yada. But last time I was doing laundry, it was $250 for a wash and $150 for a dry. So you got $4 a load, right? $4 a load. You're probably going to be doing it 2 times a week because you're working at McDonald's. So you know we have to break this down to $4 a load times 2 times 4.25, because that will give you the average of the weeks per month. So boom, now we're at $34 a month in laundry, which sucks. It's not great, but you work fast food. You don't want to smell. You don't want your clothes to smell. You don't want all that, right? So we have to start budgeting in all these little things of like, well, okay, personal property tax, taking care of that. Laundry, taking care of that. Lunch, hopefully, you know, if you were this person working at McDonald's, you know, you can snag some leftover food from work, and you know, you save yourself even more money, right? Because you're not eating lunch. You're just kind of taking a perk of working in a fast food place, right? So you don't even have to really worry about lunch out, which means that your price per meal, right? We could change this meals per day to 2 if we wanted, but then that means you're skipping lunch on your days off, and not everybody wants to do that. But I mean, this is, you know, this is the kind of stuff that you can really break down if you would like, how even, you know, local person flipping burgers has options. Now, you know, if you've gotten in car accidents and you've gotten in DUIs and your insurance is way more expensive Because this I have it as $100 a month, which means your 6 month premium should be $600 or less. And if gosh, what if you have a really good driving record? No DOI, no DUIs, no accidents, no nothing. Your car insurance could be down to $65. And then boom, we're adding money back into what we can eat every day, right? It's like they're very, very it's a variable thing because there are so many things that affect your budget. But at the end of the day, knowing all of this and taking control of your budget gives you the most power because you need a place to stay. So mortgage is happening. I don't necessarily think that society should push cell phones on people, but it has. And so your phone is going to be an expense. Um, internet allows people to access YouTube and all kinds of free entertainment, right? So I would almost always recommend internet being part of anybody's budget. And in some places, you can get like 59.99 for 12 months and you can work it out, but like you should budget for 100. Well, you should budget for what your internet bill is. Technically, this is some random made up thing. Um, Loans. I know a lot of people got student loans, and sometimes that'll have to be included. I highly recommend just because you're gonna have your student loans for a long time unless you have a way to magically pay them off. Before I took some steps, my loan obligation was $400 a month personally. Now, so if I was working at McDonald's, right, I just added $400 to my monthly obligations of money, right? My price per meal with doing laundry, saving for my personal property tax, my price per meal is now 84 cents. There is a possibility to make that work and still eat 3 times a day, but it would be a very big struggle. And this is the situation where you cannot handle those surprise bills, right? We're at less than $1 a meal. You can't give me a $15 parking ticket. I'm not going to eat for the rest of the month. Like this is the scenario that those people are in. And it sucks and it's unfortunate. And I don't want anybody to be in it. And that's kind of why I'm sitting here doing this. Because it's like, I don't have what most people would consider a wildly unfortunate situation. I haven't had a DUI. My car insurance is fine. I haven't, lived out of my means, but I was trained at a young age not to do that. My mom had a lot of credit card debt that most of it wasn't even really her fault. And it just came down to, I learned money adds stress, controlling money relieves stress. And I've been operating under those things for the better part of 25 years. Because, like I said, I learned this at a very, very young age. So, this could be your situation. If this is your situation, I highly recommend finding anywhere that will let you refinance your student loans. You are going to have them for a while. The fact that you are going to get a lower monthly payment, but potentially pay the loan for XYZ years longer. I'm not telling anybody exactly what to do, but the bottom line is you don't get to make those decisions, right? You're looking at 84 cents a meal to eat. You need to make a decision that will help you, not hurt you, because you're about as hurt as anybody could be right now. So I would recommend taking this 400 to social finance or, student debt consolidation, whatever, right? Because most of them, And definitely always read the fine print. I will say, if you are refinancing any loan, make sure that there is no early payoff penalty. Because if you have an early payoff penalty on a student loan and your situation changes and all of a sudden you become the general manager of a McDonald's and this is your life, okay? Okay, now we have $2,000 extra to throw at our student loan because life gave us a bone, okay? Which $34 for a McDonald's manager is insane and impossible. But this is the kind of thing that could happen. Now your price per meal is $30. You can go get 9 coffees at Starbucks. It wouldn't even matter. But if you have an early payoff penalty on your loan, now this money just gets thrown at the fee because you are paying it off early. Don't let that happen. Always read that fine print. So we read the fine print, we do what we're supposed to do. My loan obligation when I did it went from $400 a month to $110 a month. I personally pay a little extra, but this is a typical reconsolidation expectation. You know, you're probably going to reduce it by almost 75%, if not exactly that. So now instead of 80 cents a meal, now we're at $4 a meal. This $4 a meal still ain't great. I 100% sympathize with anybody who has to be in this situation and do a $4 a meal lifestyle. But this $4 a meal lifestyle, you know, because you probably have clothes left over, right? And I know I have this budgeted: clothes, food, entertainment. Yes, clothes, food, entertainment, which means if you want to go out, right? Say you want to go out for a date, okay? So you take your $4 a meal and you say, I'm not going to eat breakfast for 2 weeks. Cool. I don't necessarily recommend it, or maybe you can eat for $1 for breakfast, or maybe you just eat leftovers, or you bulk make dinner and it lasts for breakfast, right? So we're skipping breakfast for 2 weeks because we want to go on a date. Cool. We skip breakfast for 2 weeks so we can go out on a date. Your date has to be $56 or less. There are plenty of things you can do for fun for $56. And that's why I'm like, I hate having all this information and this ability to do this stuff in a spreadsheet, right? It's like, because I know not everybody can do all this, put it in front of themselves, all that. But like, number one recommendation for everybody is, hey, don't do the thing that you like to do. And it's like, sure, that is a recommendation, but it's not an answer, right? Like we're doing this whole thing without Netflix. Okay. Well, what if you really like a Netflix show, right? Okay, fine. Let's put Netflix on here. Okay. You only lost 20 cents in your dollar per meal and you still have Netflix. That's cool. Now you can watch Netflix. Say your price per meal doesn't really worry you. You're going to eat ramen for 2 meals a day and you're like, I also want Amazon. Okay, we'll put in Amazon. $140 divided by 12, 1167 is your monthly obligation to Amazon. Your price per meal only went down 12 cents, right? We're still almost at the $4 mark. Now, your date has to be a little cheaper if you don't eat breakfast for 2 weeks, but these are the kinds of things that, like, once you put it in here and you put it in front of yourself, and like I have this actually listed out over here. So this is why people hate taxes, by the way, right here. Your hourly rate at McDonald's would get you a $600 paycheck, but taxes knock it down to 450. Um, so this whole picture is why I really dislike the advice of don't do the fun thing. It's like, man, the fun thing is usually what keeps people together, right? Like, and I'm talking as, this is somebody who lives alone, who might have a person that they're dating or someone that they could potentially date and they want to save up for the date. But like, what if I'm talking to like a single person who doesn't really have to worry about dates, and this is your life, right? This is your life broken down on paper. You have Netflix, you have Amazon. We're saving for personal property tax. All this, right? This is your life. Your utility bill, $160. This is your leftover money after. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm tracking this down myself over here. I didn't realize I had already done all this math. All the math that I did right here is actually already done right here. Um, and then I have this set up too, right? So this is the extras, right? So Netflix, Amazon, personal property tax isn't an extra, but I put it in here because you need to be aware of it, but you don't need to be like daily cowering from it. Is kind of the deal. Um, yeah, so all the extra spending, everything comes down here. Okay. Yep. Well, because I think laundry is a very, very valid concern. Right? And this also just kind of tells you, like, this is how much money is going to these things. Now, the personal property tax you can't really avoid, but you know, if you had if you had Spotify, if you had a more expensive Netflix, if you had Netflix and the Hulu Disney bundle, right? It's like this number going up is crazy because this is your yearly budget for food, $7,000. This is your yearly budget for food and clothes and entertainment and everything after we pay for Netflix, Amazon, and we keep ourselves aware of our personal property tax obligation. Now, half of this decline is the personal property tax because we know it's 360 bucks. But the rest of it is Netflix and Amazon, right? So it's like I'm never going to tell anybody no because I don't want to tell you no. I want you to live your full life and, we're going to you're going to do what you want to do. But you need to know what doing what you want to do costs you. Um, So it's been an hour. I've been rambling about this. Nobody's here, so I don't know if we're gonna reach anybody and get anybody any budget help today. But if you see this, later, I'm gonna share a snippet of this or something in a couple places. Don't let your friends be broke, and if you can't help them, send them to me. All right. We're all in this together. The world's getting crazier. Money's going to get tighter. You need to know where it's going and you need to know where you need to be aware of where it's going. You don't need to stop doing anything. You need to be aware. Um, all right, folks. You know, keep God in the back of your mind.